recording? Okay, wonderful. So, welcome everybody to this talk, The Professional Side of Professional Animation, with me, Motsi Dapul. My experience as Motsi Dapul, my experience as an animator spanned 7 years. Technically 8 years, but I did take a break in the middle. I first started working as a an animator in the Philippines. So I have 7 years of experience, and I've worked at 5 studios in total. Um, and my the way I pitched it is that I have never been rejected from a single one of those studios, which is well mostly true. I mean, if I ever had got rejected, I never knew about it. Is basically what it is. So that's how that works. Um, so here I'm going to be teaching you all how to land the job in animation and how to keep that job in animation. Um, I won't be teaching you how to do animation because chances are y'all are better than me at that. My lesson today is about some what they call soft skills, but they're not soft skills. They're needed for literally everything. These are like, the way they call housekeeping like soft skills. No, this is literally your entire life living in capitalism. So, I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to, win people over, how to get jobs, how to keep jobs. And this is not, obviously, you're not guaranteed to get jobs after you attend this talk, but it will be very helpful. These are just some skills that are very useful for your professional life. And I made a nice little list for it, so let's start on that. I will be I will not be showing chat for this video, but I will pop it open once we get into our Q&A. So let's do that real quick. Okay, here you go. Let me make sure. Okay. Hopefully everything's working. I kind of want to show chat. Well, let me actually do this. I can look at my phone. That's even better. So I will just check chat if there's any questions, but otherwise we can start with this. I forgot to make a presentation, so I just made a Google Doc, but it should be clear enough. We're gonna go by parts of a job application. Now, I had a bit that said before you start, so this is what it says before you start, but then I realized there's a bit before you start. So let's just start at the very beginning. 1. If you are applying for an art job, have you made anything? Because unlike certain other jobs, when it comes to art, it's not as important where you went to school or what what the name of your school was. Like, it can help. Like, in any case, it can help a little bit. But what's really important is, have you made anything? You need a demo reel, you need some experience. If you can't get on projects, try making your own. Like, we are artists, we have that kind of passion and drive. And apply it to some small, like right now, we are in this point where there are a lot of amazing online projects, and you can try to apply to some smaller ones or work on projects with your friends. It's always good to study people's reels, specifically people whose jobs match the one you want to get. Okay, like, it's always good to get inspiration, but if you're really planning to get into work, you gotta study some, successful reels and make something related to the job you're applying to. This is important, it has to be related. The next thing is something that I'm sure your parents will have told you for a long time, and honestly, it is true on a certain level. Like, on the one hand, people will, like, a lot of, like, people who aren't in the arts will tell you, like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. But what's important is that you have, a proper, like, presentation of yourself. Um, you want to show them your work, show them your work. Make separate social media for your professional self, keep it updated, get a website and portfolio, get a LinkedIn. The LinkedIn is important. I know a lot of people don't want to get a LinkedIn. You gotta you gotta get a LinkedIn, and it'll help you keep in touch with, like, your fellow professionals. You can lose out on jobs if you make a bad impression. I've seen it happen, unfortunately. I feel that it might have even impacted me. I recommended somebody, but they're basically airing their personal drama on the what's I immediately forgot the IG that they had provided for work, and so I got in contact with the person who I recommended, and the person who I recommended them to told me that they were not going to hire them because of that drama. It's not that you're not allowed to have drama, but try to make a separate social media, like have a personal one and a professional one. Um, if you get experience, IMDb is amazing. Like that really legitimizes you. There is a way like you can actually start seeing your name sometimes once you like start working on certain projects. You can try to like create your own IMDb. It's a little bit harder, but I think it can be done if you have legit like things you've worked on.
Hi.
Oh, oops, sorry.
Hi, sorry, I think you lost video.
Oh no. Oh, one sec. Sorry. Uh oh. One sec. Yeah. Huh. Hello? Sorry about that. What happened? Uh oh. Hmm. Okay. No worries. Oh, there you go. Uh oh. Where did I stop? Mm-hmm. 7:30. So 2 minutes ago. Okay. All right. I think I know what happened. Sorry about that. Let's try again. Okay. Hello, everybody. So sorry. I think I know what happened, and I apologize. I wanted to check the chat on my phone, but I think I messed it up. I screwed it up. So let me just get back to that. Okay. Okay. Let me make sure. Okay. I will go back to. Okay. Hmm. All right. This looks fine. Oops. That'll happen. Okay. I'll go back to. I'll just go over the whole thing again, but very quickly. Okay. Let me make sure. Is it correct? There. Okay. There we go. All right, we're back to here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hopefully this works. Okay. So, back to this real quick. Make sure you have some demo reel, know your experience. Study people's reels, make something related to the job you're applying to. Basically, what all this comes up to is that you have to have made something. Even if it's not something that's like a big name or anything, you just have to have made something so that you can present it in your demo reel. If you haven't made anything, then why would you like apply to a job where you have to make things? You know what I mean? And if you're gonna apply to a specific job, make something related to the job you're applying to. We'll go into that later. Um, this one, online presence, make a separate social media for a professional self and keep it updated. Um, Basically, get a website, get a portfolio, get a LinkedIn. I know a lot of people don't like LinkedIn, but you gotta get one. Um, you can lose out on jobs if you make a bad impression. I've seen that happen. It is deeply unfortunate. Let me just, okay, now I'm like a little paranoid. Let me make sure that I'm not missing anything on the chat. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, the drama. Thank you so much. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So, um, yeah, essentially somebody was putting their drama on the IG that they had provided for the job. Wasn't good. The person that specifically did not get the job because of that drama, and I was told that because I recommended them. So, well, not great. So it's not that you're not allowed to have your own life, but a lot of things should not be connected to professional life. That's just how it goes. Like you can still have a personality on your professional social media, but just try to separate. Like have a degree of separation because not everybody needs to know every bit about your life. And if you have your social media about your life and your job, it's not gonna be great. It's great to have an IMDb once you get a bit of experience. Sometimes this will happen on its own if you have worked on a few shows that are like notable or even just have an IMDb page. But sometimes you can also make your own if you can provide things you have made. That's why the making things is important. You don't have to be sterile, but try not to go wild either. I mentioned that. My own social media, especially Twitter, it is not what you like. It's half professional and half me. However, the way I have cultivated it is that if somebody, challenged me or asked me about things that I've put in that social media, I can 100% be proud of that, you know? Okay. Get to know the industry. Well, you're in TAAFI, you're here. You're already halfway there. Follow some people you admire, meet people, make friends, be friendly. If they remember you, they'll think of you when jobs open up in their studio. This is important. Making friends for friendship's sake is wonderful, but in terms of a professional setting, you network. You can't just, you can't just hide. Like you can maybe like go so far as to present your art, but you can't just be antisocial and like hate communicating with people, because part of this industry is communication, and you gotta kind of work on that. And if it's hard for you, you can still like kind of try a couple of basics. And even if it's difficult for you to socialize with people, these are your people, like don't be afraid, like be professional, but understand that these are your people, so don't be afraid to communicate with them. Now we have gotten to before you start. This is before you start, and this is before you start. um, okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure that I'm not missing any chats. Yeah. All right. So this is important, okay? Best foot forward, most impressive work first. Um, in your demo reel, your resume, and your short bio, try to make sure that you present your most impressive work first. And I said in my notes I said clout works because that sounds like bad, but honestly you have to make sure that people like are looking at your application. They will see that name, that impressive work that you've done first. They will not sit down and read through like every single bit to get to the bottom to find that you have worked on this amazing thing. You have to put it on top. Demo reel, you have to put it at the very beginning. If you have enough work, only put your best stuff in your demo reel. However, if you don't have enough work and you cannot make your demo reel like, I don't know, 30 seconds, or no, I mean like if you can't make it like 15 seconds or whatever, put their best stuff on the front. Because if you put your least impressive stuff on the front, that is what people will judge you by immediately. And this may not always be the case, but sometimes if somebody's in a hurry and they have to look through a bunch of demo reels, you want your best stuff in front. I will always say, whenever I apply for an animation job, I will say, I worked on My Little Pony. That has been carrying me for years. I just say that because it's important. It helps people know what you do, what you're able to do, the big stuff that you've worked on, etc., etc. And it doesn't have to be like a big name thing like My Little Pony, but it has to be a show that is directly relevant to to the thing that you're applying to now. So you can't say that you've worked on a 2D show if you're applying for a 3D position. You know what I mean? I can give some examples actually. I can actually provide in the notes that I can provide later. I will be providing this entire outline. I can provide my own resume, my different resumes as examples. I can provide my demo reel. My demo reel is technically wrong because it's too long, but I did do the correct thing in that I put the most impressive thing, which is the My Little Pony stuff, on the front. Okay. Make a short bio for introductions. Learn how to make a short bio. Something that you can introduce yourself by, not only in a CV. It's very important when you're a professional to know your strengths and what you stand for as an artist. So you have to be able to make a very short summary of yourself. It's an elevator pitch essentially, but it's for you. My short bio is as follows. It is, I don't memorize it. Sorry, one sec. But my short bio is on my website. Motsy Dapple is a queer Pinay writer, artist, and animator who's bringing Filipino and LGBTQ-themed stories to global audiences, primarily through genre stories such as fantasy, mythology, sci-fi, horror, and romance. If it's specifically for animation, I say I'm working as an animator at Jamfield. I've worked at Sphere Animation, Portfolio, Guru Studio. I went to Sheridan and I worked at Top Draw. Like, you gotta like have that on hand. Now, this is probably the most important part of your application. You have to specialize. You have to tailor your application. The most common mistake I have seen with, many applicants and applications in general is that they will try to put, and this might be a mistake of thinking you have to put your best stuff, so you have to put all your best stuff. But that's not the point of putting your best stuff. You have to make sure that everything you have in your demo reel or your resume or your bio is relevant to the job that you're applying to. For example, if you're applying for a storyboarding job, only put storyboards and anything related to storyboards like sequential storytelling, comics, etc. Anything that can show your strength as a storyboard artist. And this one's only if you don't have storyboards. Like, literally, ignore this if you already have like a bunch of storyboards you can present. But these are options. But again, I'm not a storyboard expert, so ask actual storyboarders what they put in their demos and go with that. Obviously, Leicas. That's what I actually meant. Leicas. See? Okay. This is for if you don't have enough material, but you want to show the strength of your sequential storytelling. But this is really what you're looking for. Obviously, like, you have to really focus down. Oops. Now, this is my actual expertise, 2D animation. But 2D animation is too broad. You have to specialize further. Now, we're going to run through a couple of things here. Rigged animation is different from hand-drawn animation, is different from effects animation, is different well, these two are the same, but still. And of course, you have to look at harmony and animate experience for most 2D jobs, most industry jobs in 2D. Learn it if you can. Sorry, I'm being a bit vague here. All of you know 2D Harmony, Toon Boom Harmony, probably. That is the program that 2D animators use. Animate, on the other hand, is Adobe Animate or Flash. Some studios might still use this. So these are the two major ones that you have to know about. This is fine because if you learn Animate, it's easy to learn Harmony. That's kind of how it goes because Harmony is like better Animate. But please do learn that if you can because knowing the program is very important, but not as important as knowing the fundamentals. Okay. If you are applying for rigging, obviously show your rigging work, possibly show your rigs in motion, etc., etc. Animation editing. I don't know if all of you know that animation editing is a job, but it is. It is the editing attached to Leica editing. It is basically timing animation, essentially, but it's mostly Leica editing. I found out about this job when I was recommended to chat with an animation editor who was a friend of mine. So yeah, there are actually a lot of different jobs. These are not the only jobs. You have to find your specialty. You have to find what it's called. You have to find the people who work in it. And you have to find out what they put in their demo reels. So that's very important. Okay. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. All right. Perfect. Now, here's the last thing you need to know before you start. It is your salary. So, know ahead of time how much you expect to be paid. Have a range. So have a range of what you expect to be paid between this much and this much. Research by asking people in your field, checking Glassdoor for median range of income. Aim higher than your actual expected pay, but not too high. For example, I expect to be paid, let's say, $1,300 a week. That's an example. I will ask to be paid $1,400 or $1,350. And then we'll see what happens. So just know that if you are still starting out, do not have lofty expectations about your pay, but do not allow yourself to get underpaid. You have to have a balance. You have to strike a balance. You cannot expect to be paid the amount that a lot of intermediate animators are being paid, but understand what the lower threshold is and try to get above that. It depends on the actual job that you're doing. But for 2D animators, I generally say like around 900's low, 1,000 ish. But yeah, it's about that much per week. Sorry, per week. For some reason, I go by week. Anyway, now we have gotten to the actual applying for jobs part. Yay! So here's an important thing: make a studio list. Don't just think of one studio and say, I want to work at that studio and I will not do anything except work at that studio. Because the way this industry works, you can work at that studio. It might not be your first studio. It could be your first studio, and then by this time next year, it'll be in a different studio. So don't fall in love with the studio too much. Um, but have it on your list. Check their requirements. Don't just send your stuff. Please, 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 please read their website. Check what they need. Everyone has different ones. Sometimes they'll make you sign up for a thing. Just do it. Put in your stuff. Sometimes they will say, send it through this email. Send it through that email. Sometimes they will say, you have to call us. Then you'll have to call them. If you're unclear about their requirements, you can cold call to double check. If they are not clear about the requirements on their website, you can give them a call. They all have phone numbers. You can ask, hello, I would like to send my application in, but it doesn't seem to provide an email, or it doesn't seem to provide a place where I can send it in. Please let me know. Write it down. Check their job openings. Their career section will have what they need. However, if you don't see your specific job in their openings, still feel free to say, oh, I know that you do this sort of work, even if there are no job openings now. I'm sending in my resume and demo reel. Please keep me in mind for when this job, this type of job opens. Sometimes they'll actually be looking, but they haven't put it on their website. So it's always good to get in touch that way. Again, make sure if they say, like, if you're applying for a job that's not on the careers, this is what you do, make sure you follow those instructions. But you can also just send to their email, make a very respectful email, include your information, and chances are they might actually think of you when they need your specific job type. Cast a wide net. Apply to many studios. Don't do it mindlessly. Like, don't just throw your application and have the exact same name of a different studio on that application. Like, actually think of what you want to do at that studio, apply to that. Sometimes you will apply to 2 different job types, and we will have to get into that. Basically, I forgot to say, if you want to apply to 2 different job types, then you will have to make 2 different demo reels, 2 different resumes, and 2 different, that's just how that goes. You don't have to make them too different. Sometimes you will have the exact same beginning of your resume, all your experience, but you will have to shuffle some things around. Be like, oh, this is my experience in this specific type of work. But you will have to have 2 separate resumes, 2 separate demo reels sometimes, if the jobs are different. A good example would be if you are a rigged animator, but you're applying for an effects animation job. You'll have to make an entirely different demo reel. You'll have to put in your effects work, your hand-drawn work in that effects demo reel. Versus if you're applying for a rigged job, you have to put all your rigged animation in the other demo reel. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot of work, but once you do it, it's done. You have it. You can update it sometimes, but it's there. So when you see an application for an effects job, oh, you have your effects demo reel and your effects resume ready. So that's always good. And you can copy paste a lot of stuff. Just move it around, whatever you need. You can say, I am an effects animator and I am a rigged animator. Or if you're applying for the rigged one, I am a rigged animator, and then put effects on animator underneath. It's just whatever's the most important, put it at the top. Important, some studios may get back to you within a week, others may get back to you in months. This has happened to me many times. Um, and sometimes I actually like have been waiting a few months and I get that job and I'm like, wow, this is great actually. But sometimes you need some work urgently. So obviously you will go to the studio that got back to you in a week. Now we're at interview. Woo! Some interviews are animation tests. This is normal. It's a skill check. You can do it. You're animators. You know what to do. I don't need to teach you anything. um, okay. Okay, this is important. Don't self depreciate. Now, this one is okay. You can be humble and be respectful. You can, don't be an egotist. But please do not focus on your weaknesses. Don't even mention your weaknesses. Like, if they ask, what are your weaknesses? Mention it once and then move on. Because do not dwell. If you don't trust yourself, they won't trust you. For example, somebody asked me, what's my weakness? I will say something like, um, um, oh, I have a little bit of difficulty with much longer scenes, but I can still I can get through them as long as I'm able to take some time so like whenever you say what your weakness is, say how you can overcome it in the same sentence. But try again not to dwell too much. Don't try to like over explain anything. Keep it brief. Stop yourself if you feel yourself rambling. um, Basically, you have to show that you are capable. You can do that without looking like an egotist. Accept criticism. Be ready to take notes. You can explain your process briefly, but accept animation notes to show you're ready and willing to do better on the job. So this is it. Don't be combative, but don't be a yes man. If you made a mistake, say, "Oh, I see what you mean. I will take that note and I will do that edit, etc., etc. This is good for both when you're on the job and before the job." Okay? The point is you can do better but you aren't doing bad. Because if you tell them, "Oh, I'm bad," they will believe you. If you tell so you're not supposed to do that when you're applying for a job. Do not tell them you're bad. If they point out something that you have done wrong, say, "Oh, I see. I definitely understand. Like, I see what you mean. I will take that into account, and I will edit that. I will take that into account for the future." Ask some questions. How long is the contract? Is it remote? Is it on-site, hybrid? Clarify. It shows you're engaged. Like, don't just be like, I don't, like, if you don't ask any questions at all, it'll kind of look like you don't care. You don't have to ask so many questions, but you can ask some. Okay, let me make sure. All right, I will look at the main questions once this is done. Okay, you got the job. Okay, first of all, if you didn't get the job, focus on other applicate. Like, don't like if you do get rejected, doesn't matter. Focus on your other applications. Don't dwell. Here's a list of reasons you didn't get the job. It has nothing to do with your skill level. That's the thing. You might think, "Oh, I didn't get the job because I'm bad." No, not at all. Might be production issues, budget issues, someone messed up internally, new schedule, your skill isn't hyper specific enough. They already filled the job. They think you're perfect for a different show. Get in touch with you later. Person handling your application left. Da 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 da. Lots of reasons why you may have not have gotten the job. For the most part, they'll probably just not get in touch with you because they may want you later. So sometimes it's just bad timing. Sometimes it's just like other things beyond your control. And if it was about your skill level, you'll never know. They can like send you rejection, but honestly, by this point you should just be like focusing on other jobs if that one didn't get back to you, or if you got a rejection, just work on other stuff. And of course, if there's any like proper criticism that they given, take it into account for the future. Take their notes. If you have your project that you still have, edit your project, put it back into the demo reel. It's always improving. Okay, you gotta step it into one studio. Congrats. So, you gotta step it into one studio. Make sure to check it's above board. If you need the job, obviously you need the job, but study the contract before you sign it. Okay, they might try to underpay you. You can actually negotiate a little higher. Now, when you are very new, This is a little more difficult. Obviously, you have more negotiating power when you have more experience, but it is not unreasonable for you to say, "Oh, I previously mentioned that my pay expectation was in this range. May I ask the amount listed? May I ask if this amount can be increased to this amount?" If they say yes, wonderful, you got it. If they say no, consider the following: ask for a smaller increase. Like, even, like, if they're like, oh, they're basically bartering, which is kind of weird, but it can still happen. At least you get a higher amount than you got in the contract. Ask for a week to consider the contract. This will give other jobs the chance to, like, get in touch with you. Or you can actually talk to people, like, is this reasonable? Ask your animator friends, especially people who are still juniors or know what juniors are getting. See, is this reasonable, or should I, if you have that ability, you should check it. Like, you cannot just jump in. It is important to get your first job, but be smart. And if you act smart, you'll look professional. That's always good. You can't just be a yes man. You have to look professional in your field, even if you're not an employee yet, or, well, a contract worker yet. Okay. Here's another one. You got accepted into multiple studios. Congrats. Compare the jobs. Which works better for you? Which pays better? Etc. Etc. How long is it? Do you have benefits? How long is the contract? Ask follow-up questions. If you're feeling anxious about saying no to one of these jobs, when you've, like, accepted, first of all, make sure to accept one before you say no to the other one. Sometimes things may fall apart in, like, literally days. So accept the job, get the contract. Once you've done all that, then send the "I'm sorry, I can't accept this job" to the other job. Okay, just don't let it go for more than a week, because that's very unprofessional. So here we go. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've accepted a previous job. I'm excited for what your team will achieve. Please keep in mind for future projects. So this shows gratitude. Thank you so much. I'm afraid, like, I can't join this project anymore. I'm sorry. Be positive, Like, show them that you appreciate their work and that you would love to work with them in the future once there's more opportunity. And next time you need to work, you can refer to its previous acceptance. That's a big one. If they have future projects and you're looking for work again, say, "Hey, it's me again," and if they remember you, even better. Okay, I'll speed through the rest of this. Okay, after you get the job, you'll always need a job. With an asterisk, you might leave the animation industry. You might not need a job. I don't know. You might, it depends. Like, you might not be working in this particular field, but don't burn bridges. Be gracious, kind, friendly. Don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole is very important, because even if you are the greatest artist in the world, you will not get hired compared to the person who is pretty good and also wonderful to work with. This is a team thing. You cannot have, like, horrible ego on a team production. Even if you can do all the stuff, if you can't work with your team, nobody wants to work with you. That's just how this goes. Your artistic skill will not outrank your ability to work as a team. That's very important. Be a team player. Pay attention to chat and updates. Chat being, like, basically, if people are working remotely or just in general, there will be a work chat. Take part every now and then. Be remembered. That's the important thing. You cannot be forgotten, because once they're, like, thinking of people to sign on to other shows, if you are forgotten, they'll be like, "Oh crap, I forgot to sign on this person, now you don't have a job." That is important. You don't have to be the biggest personality, but please talk to your coworkers and be remembered. Keep your lead updated. Don't ghost your lead. You don't gotta bother them all the time, but it's not a bother if you're asking questions, to make sure that your scene turns out better. If you're slightly delayed, keep them posted, etc., etc. Ask for more work sometimes. If you run out of work, ask for more. It shows that you are willing and invested in doing well by your team. But if you need rest, Like, don't ask for extra work all the time. Don't do that. Just if you realize, oh, I've run out of work, I still have a lot of hours, I can do the work, I'm sure my team is busy, I will help lighten the load. That's team player. This is important. Keep your weekends. Don't push yourself beyond your limits. This job is burnout central. I literally almost left animation when I arrived here in Canada. I came back because there's a lot, like the atmosphere is a lot better, quite frankly. Do your best, but if you can't hit the deadline, communicate with your lead. I cannot stress this enough. They will not fire you on the spot if you say, I can't finish the scene today. I'm sorry. The most they'll do is say, oh, would you like us to take this other scene that you have on your roster to give it to somebody else? Or they'll just do it anyway. Or they will say, oh, that's fine. Like, we will give you that. You can submit it on Monday. That sort of thing. Like, don't do this all the time. Like, don't keep being late with all your scenes, but if you are late, it's not the end of the world, you know? You have to take care of yourself because if you don't, you're just not gonna stay. Online presence still important. Keep it professional. Make sure to update your work experience to get it. Professional with quotes. I professional not in the way that other jobs need you to be. This is more like just you know, be engaged in your profession. Keep your work updated, etc. Update all this, and finally, other professional notes. Okay, so this one's important, and I learned this very quickly having worked at different studios. Your yearly raise is a certain percentage. I believe it's like, what is it? 20? No, it's not 25. It's like 0.25 or something. Either way, it'll never be higher than going to another studio and asking for a higher salary. So please don't be afraid to apply to different studios when you need a change. If you're comfortable with your studio, that's fine. But if you're thinking, oh, if you're just settling because you're afraid to look for other jobs, that's not good for you. You can settle once you have a mid to high paying position that you're comfortable with. But if you started with a very low salary, then you're not going to get enough raises to help you. So once you get a certain amount of experience, do not be afraid to apply to other jobs, even if all your friends are at this job, even if all your friends are at this studio, even if you love the studio. Just, it's better for your growth as a professional to at least try to work at different studios. And the nice thing about Toronto is that it's pretty much like the same 10 studios, like kind of tossing animators at each other. It's, seasonal. Like, oh, there's no work right now. You apply to a different studio. Oh, there's no work at that studio. Apply to a different studio. That's how I got to 5 different studios in 7 years. But at the same time, I did my best work. I did not, slack off. I didn't get fired. Well, I got fired once. Here's what it was because of COVID and not because of me. So that's important. But yeah. So basically, just like do your best, but don't be afraid to apply to other places because I've given you all these notes. See, like I have applied to a different place like almost yearly since I arrived in Canada, and I have never failed to get a job. So, don't be afraid. It's not that scary if you have the experience. Get to know your taxes. Taxes. Learn or get a proper accountant. There's a lot of benefits you can get as an artist. Learn it, and it changes every year, so it's always good to have a professional who keeps up with that sort of thing. Take advantage of your benefits, dental, medical, etc. Don't forget, I go to a chiro regularly for my back. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, being an animator is very sedentary, so you gotta take care of yourself. And that's pretty much my presentation. Let me look at the questions now. One sec. Let's go back up here. And, once you have all that information, it'll be good for you to keep it and just update as you gain more experience. Yeah. Okay. So I will now look at the questions. So I will be popping this open. Okay. Wonderful. All right. Okay. Okay. Sabrina asks, am I able to talk about salary and annual numbers? Yes, I can. So my annual salary, and this is where taxes are very important to get into because when you're asking about your new job, you also have to ask about. Oops, sorry. Why does the thing keep popping out? Okay. You also have to ask, considering how you'll be taxed. Now, I am taxed approximately around 25%. I'm a permanent resident and not a citizen, so it might be different for different people. But it's important to still know. So my okay, I had this number a while ago. Let me just like get it up again, real quickly. My salary calculator says, sorry. So salary calculator says I technically get 67,000 a year. That's 1,300 a week. But with taxes, that goes all the way down to how much? Like 25% times 67,000. No, that's wrong. Sorry, one sec. Percent. That's about, yeah, 50K, 51K, which is median for animators essentially. So, yeah, that's why you have to think about when you are asking for your income. Like obviously when you start out, it won't be that high, but it is important. Like if you're living in Toronto, for example, you have to think about how much you're paying for rent, how much you're getting taxed, etc., etc. These are important things. These are adult things you have to think about, um, and that's why you have to go higher than what you are expected to be paid, because a lot of that will be eaten up by taxes. And even if you get a nice little return at the end of every year, you have the rest of that year to think about. Okay. Next one. Okay. How often do video editing opportunities arise? Or better yet, how can you build a better portfolio when you're not an animator? Okay. Video editing is interesting because a lot of editors don't have to make their own footage. You know? You just have to show that you are able to edit. So even though I can't speak personally to to editing as a job, I do know that editors are able to kind of edit like other things. Like maybe you will have to edit for like other people, but you can just show your skill. You basically look at other editors like reels, look at their work. You can show your skill as an editor without having to basically make everything from scratch. You can, and that'll be helpful. But it's not a requirement because it's an edit. That's editing. You're not applying as an animator. You're applying as an editor. I hope that helps. I don't know if that was helpful because I'm not an editor. I tried to apply to it once, but okay. What is the promotion length for junior animators uniform for all studios, or is it something negotiable with your job interview? Um, I actually don't know. I'm sorry, Minty, I can't answer that question because I don't know. When I was a junior animator in the Philippines, let's not talk about that. the I actually don't know what the probation length are because when I got my first animation job here in Canada, it got cut off by COVID. That's why I got fired. I was laid off because of COVID. Um, and three basically what happens there is that as soon as I got another job, because I had 3 years of experience, no, 4 years of experience in the Philippines, by the time I got into a different job, I was no longer a junior animator. But that's different. I cannot speak to the probationary length, unfortunately. What are animation tests generally like? Well, good, thank you for asking. You won't get an animation test on every job you apply to, but basically they will provide you with, in my case, it's rigged animation. So they will have a rig for you to work with, and they will tell you a small action. In one case, I had a rig for a character, and they said, "Can you make this character turn around from this pose to this pose?" And they show you the little Leica. They say, "Oh, he turns around and he does this pose, like very superheroic pose. So you have to animate that, taking into account their what that pose says about their personality. That's basically what it is. You'll animate it, you'll send it back. They'll tell you, oh, this is good or whatever. Like they'll tell you if it works out. They'll consider you for the job. Um, it depends. I also once got an animation test for a certain movie where a certain director was certainly arrested. So there's that. um, okay. Who do you contact at the studio for more information if the posting is not clear? How do you find the contact information if it's not available on the website? It should be. That's the difficult thing. If the information on the posting is not clear, search the name of this studio. The number should be on Google Maps. If it's not, that's shady. That's bad. That's really bad. But generally, they will have their information. Like you look at their contact information. You look at how do you get in touch. Look at like and just basically email them or call them. Check their phone number on Google Maps. Call that phone number. Ask where we need to be routed if you're applying for a job. It's fairly easy to get that contact information, but if at that point you cannot find literally any way to contact them, try to get in contact on their socials if they're active on social media. And if they don't respond to any of that, then drop it because that studio has not done their due diligence as a professional studio. Is it common to negotiate for things other than salary, such as more vacation or better benefits? Um, hmm. I can't say because I've never done that. And I don't want to mislead you guys into thinking I am the expert at all this. I have negotiated my salary. I have not negotiated my vacation or benefits. I have, however, clarified how much vacation I would get and what benefits and when they would be, when it would be, come into, like, when it would come into effect. So I had to clarify, like, oh, when is this benefit gonna come around? It's always good to ask, though. Like, ask, like, is it possible to get more vacation time? Is it possible, is this benefit included in the package? Is there any way to get that benefit? It's always good to ask these questions because it shows, again, you are professional, you are asking these questions, you are well informed, you have what you need, etc., etc. But I personally have never done that. Are the salaries you mentioned in Canadian dollars? I'm American. Yes, this is in Canadian dollars. Any tips for people seeking remote work that are outside of Canada? Okay, good. Here's the difficult truth. Remote work was much more common back in the pandemic, but now a lot of studios are trying to focus on their own local people. However, there is still a lot of remote work available. I will say basically search remote, like send emails asking if they are accepting remote work. Ask if they're accepting remote work. Search for remote jobs, but also ask like, "Hello, I saw this job posting. Is it available for international work? Is it available for anybody working remote?" Um, if they say no, then of course you can't apply. But if they say yes, see they didn't even put if they didn't put it in their job posting, but you asked, so you got that information. So it's always good to ask. It's always good to get in touch. It's always good, maybe not to phone call, but yeah, email, directly get in touch. Oh, another thing is, by the way, the reason I say please get a LinkedIn is because a lot of job postings are posted on LinkedIn. If you follow the studios that you want to apply to on LinkedIn, they will post the job and you will perhaps see it before anybody else. So that's very important. Um, would you recommend focusing on one specific aspect of animation or having experience in multiple positions? Storyboarding, animatic editing, or hand-drawn animation and storyboarding? Okay. Focusing on one specific aspect of animation. I recommend, if you are applying to any of those positions, having experience in them. And I can't, I've specialized in 2D rigged animation for years. So that is where my experience lies. If you want to apply to other things, again, make sure you have examples of your work and experience in that work. Um, if you don't have experience, then have specific examples that you have. Um, I don't think one is better than the other, but I will say that if you have more experience in one, you have stronger negotiating power. To say that, let's say for example, you are only an intermediate level anime, like you're not a junior, but you aren't like an intermediate animator. You're not an intermediate storyboarder. As long as you have experience in those fields or examples of your work in those fields, you can still do those jobs. But I would say specializing is a lot better in terms of keeping a job, having a job. But it really depends on you, what your strengths are. Like, I can't say one is better than the other. I just know that I have specialized in my specific type of work, and it has gotten me jobs pretty much 100% of the time. Um, yeah, like I said, if you want to go into different fields at different parts of your life, at least you have to at least have work to present when you're applying for those fields. Um, because you can say that, oh, I have done 5 years of animation, but no years of storyboarding. Can you give me the storyboarding job? And they'll be like, maybe. Like, you still have some experience because animation and storyboarding are closely tied, but I wouldn't bet on it being 100% guaranteed. How do you negotiate your salary? How do you say it in a nice way at the same time standing your ground? That's why you have to know the range you want in advance, because they will ask, like, what range are you expecting? Like, in the email, they will ask, what is your expected range? And you give your range. And once they give you once you give you the contract, you can look if it fits your range. Um, and because you have mentioned two numbers, you can say, oh, I've mentioned this in my range. Is this possible? And go for the higher one. Basically, say, thank you so much. I have read through the contract and I wanted to ask if I could request um, this amount instead of this amount, as I mentioned in my salary range. Um, and if they are below your range, then you can press the fact that you mentioned this is your range. Please keep it within the range. If they gave you something in your range, you can still maybe ask, like, oh, can you please like raise it a little bit? They may say yes, they may say no. I The way I negotiated my salary, okay, I'll tell you exactly what happened. I said I expect around 1,300 to 1,500. They gave me 1,250. I said, can I please ask for 1,300 as mentioned in my range? They accepted 1,300. This is per week, by the way. And so yeah, even if that's a small amount, that's still like $2,000 at the end of the year. Um, yeah, basically be like be consistent is how I would describe it. Like, don't just like throw out random numbers and be like, can this be higher? Can this be lower? Have your consistent range. Have your lower end and your higher end. And if they go below your lower end, push to get into that range. If they are in your range, then just fly the idea by, oh, is it possible to raise it to this? And if they say no, it's in your range. Just take it. Okay. What recommendations do you have for creating your own work for portfolio purposes? Are there things to avoid? Well, I'll say this: fan art is not a deal breaker. A lot of people have gotten work because of fan art. In fact, so don't try to avoid fan art, um, as long as it fits within the type of work you want to do. Like, for example, there is the director of Castlevania, the series. He got his work through fan art of Naruto, where he did animations of Naruto, and that's how he got his job. Similarly, there are a lot of different artists who do fan art and use that fan art, and people who see their fan art are like, wow, you can draw this character really well. Can you please do this work drawing the character and we'll pay you, etc., etc. You don't have to avoid fan art. All you have to avoid is putting in stuff that you don't think is that good. Please put in your best stuff, essentially. And creating your work for portfolio purposes, One thing is that if you are specifically making it for a portfolio, make sure you know exactly what job you're making it for. Like don't just make a comic and then say I'm going to apply for an animation job. Um if you are making it specifically for a portfolio, think of the specific job you want to do and make that work based on that specific job. Um so yeah, basically even if it's fan art, don't worry, as long as it matches the job you're applying for. You want to get a 2D animation job, do 2D animation. You want to get storyboard job, do a storyboard. Even if it is of your of your blorbos of your favorite characters, do it. Do that thing specific to the job that you're applying for. Um, as for remaking or replicating frames from other work, that's a bit tougher because you can't just copy somebody else's animation, and pass it off as your own. That's bad. That's bad form. You can practice with that, but try to make something original in terms of the movement, even if the characters aren't original. You know? Like, they're not testing you on how well you copied Naruto or something. You're testing you on how well you animate. So, basically, that. Like, try not to. And another example is like if you're doing an illustration job and you replicate a scene from a movie, but you replicate it in such a way where you've illustrated it in your style, you have a very distinctive coloring style, that's fine too. It is very contextual. Do not copy something if you are trying to present your work, but if you are trying to show, like, if you're copying, like, let's say a composition but not the main thing that you're trying to, like, get a job for, that's fine. It's all contextual. Other than LinkedIn, where can you find listings? So there is actually a Twitter that that I follow. That's animation job openings or something. I can like add it to the list. But basically, they post whenever an animation studio has a job opening, and I like to retweet some of that so that people who are looking for jobs can check that out. It's from different studios from Canada and the US, and I forget where else they get their studios from. But yeah, they're like, you can be on Twitter, you can be on LinkedIn, you can basically you can Google it sometimes. You can pay attention to the specific websites, check their websites for their job openings. That's why having a list of studios is important, so that you can check their websites every now and again to see if they've opened up a new job. Um, what do I post on LinkedIn? I post all of my professional stuff, but uniquely for me, I am an animator, but I'm also a writer. I also make a podcast. I do all that stuff. So whatever I make something, I put it on LinkedIn. And that's the big thing. If you are an artist or somebody who works in a creative field, making things is the biggest thing you can be doing. Like, whenever you make something, be proud of it. Put it on LinkedIn, unless it's something you don't want to be associated with your professional side. How much time do you usually spend communicating, chatting, engaging, emailing versus doing the work itself? Um, yeah, I think a lot of people overestimate the amount of time it takes to communicate. Like, writing a message in a chat or an email, um, or in an email won't take you more than like 30 seconds. If you're talking about being on the job, by the way, I'm not entirely sure if you mean on the job or before the job, but I think a lot of people, you know, feel like it takes longer than it does, but it takes a very short time. So what I do is at work, I greet my every morning. I say good morning to people in some way or other, so that it just gets the conversation started a little bit. And sometimes the rest of the day nobody will say anything, and that's it. End of the day ends. Goodbye. That's it. Sometimes there will be a long conversation, but the general idea is keeping, like, not being a ghost, because don't be forgotten. But like, you don't have to like spend all of your day like talking to people. You can just chime in every now and then. Obviously talk to your lead. Don't disappear. I do know somebody who lost their job because they had not emailed and like they had not talked to their lead in a while, but also because like I feel as though the studio kind of dropped the ball there as well, because they never got in contact with this person either. But yeah, like just to avoid that sort of thing, please do like get in contact if you have any questions, if there's like any concerns. Just show that you are willing to communicate. Someone got a storyboard job at Disney drawing Team Rocket fan art. I know exactly what you're talking about. Kiana's great. Um, oh, the redrawing Sailor Moon trend. Like I said, like it's contextual. If you want to show how good you are at coloring, then it doesn't matter what you're redrawing. If you show like how strong your coloring is, it does. Like basically just redrawing things is fine as long as you're specifically showcasing the skill that you want to showcase on your professional side. But it's contextual. Like every situation is different. It really depends on like what you're looking at and what you're trying to do. Just make sure it's relevant to the job you're applying to. I think that's pretty much all the questions. Do you have any other questions? Well, it's exactly 8:30. Ooh. But if you guys have any other questions, please do drop them in the chat. Okay, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. If I answered a question but it wasn't complete, or if it didn't match what you were actually trying to ask, please let me know as well. Okay. Do you mind if we send connection requests on LinkedIn? I will generally not accept connection requests from people I don't know or don't have an idea of where they came from. But I don't. So here's another thing I forgot to mention. I do. Another thing that helps, another good social media for artists is um, Instagram. You don't have to use I barely use Instagram. I post on it, but I don't barely use it. You can follow me there, and you can message me every now and then if you have questions. For LinkedIn, I tend not to accept things unless I know who this person is, or I know like what event they are getting in touch with me in connection to. So I would suggest like you can follow me on LinkedIn and you can message me there if you have any further questions. Um, but yeah, like but I probably won't accept your connection on LinkedIn, unfortunately. That depends, but like there are some things where I get a connection I have no idea why, and I just tend to ignore it. So yeah. But if you do want to get in touch again, Instagram's a good place. That's where a lot of my artist friends are, if not on Twitter. Twitter being a sinking ship. But while it's still there, it's still good for Twitter to be there. I'll put my Instagram in the message. And that's another thing. There's no like hard and fast rule as to which social media is the best one. Like obviously LinkedIn is specifically meant for professionals, but I have a Tumblr where I post all of my work. I have a Twitter. I have an Instagram. Just generally have a point of contact where you post things that you only want to be associated with your professional self. Um, my Twitter is a little wild style, but I do have all of my important information pinned, and that's the most important thing. Um, Tumblr's still pretty good. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. A lot of the best authors are on Tumblr. But yeah, my Instagram is Montablera. Yeah. Um, okay. Yes. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them. I'll probably end it in about like 5 minutes. I still primarily use Tumblr. Also, that's correct. Um, it's where all the really good authors are. And you can post. And the nice thing about Tumblr is that because of the blog style, you can actually post your portfolio there as well. Like there's nothing stopping you from making like a proper portfolio on Tumblr, because no matter what, people just want to see as soon as they open that web page your work in like an easy to read format. And I tried Behance, but I never updated Behance. And honestly, Tumblr is still where I put all of my art. So it's like, like as long as it is it is a micro blogging website. It's a website. So I also obviously have a website, like a proper website. Still has Wixsite at the end because I don't pay for it, but it's still a proper website. So it's always good to have a website. One important thing is SEO. Now I am very very lucky because I don't share my name with many people. Motzi is a very unique name. But if you have a fairly common name, try to beat the SEO by adding something unique to your name so that when you search your website, it'll be easy to find. Um, and Sonica, like you mentioned, like I still use Tumblr for fandom. That's fine. Don't you know that Tumblr has side blogs? My fandom Tumblr is separate from my professional Tumblr, but you can make as many side blogs as you need. Think about it. That's why Tumblr is great. You have side blogs. Um, okay. Side blogs are amazing. You don't have to like log in and log out. You just have to post on that darn thing. Ooh, writing side of things. Ooh, good question. Okay. All right. So, it has been an age-old problem for me to move from animation to animation writing. Now, I do have an animation writing project happening right now, but it happened completely. Okay, so here's how it happened. I made my podcast, the High Night Podcast, is a horror audio drama. I made that while I was working in animation, and somebody found me through that podcast, while also knowing I had an animation background, and so they said, "Would you like to write for this thing?" That's how that happened. So you notice it's not through my animation job. It is literally because I made a story, I posted it online, I continued to make it, it gained an audience. That's why making things is so important. That's how you connect with other artists. You cannot just hide all your stuff and expect people to know what you're about. You have to make things. And I know it's kind of tough to, like get it out there, but sometimes if you put it out there, people will be like, "Wow, I really like this comic." And that person, so okay, I'll give you a very good anecdote. Once upon a time, no, there was this guy. I'm bad because I don't remember his name, but there was this guy who did some music, and he did a few albums. He was fairly successful, but like not huge. And he made like an album, and when he made that album, there was a young fan who had his album signed 10 years ago, or like 10, 20 years ago. And then he forgot about that album. It wasn't his best one. It wasn't his biggest one. It was whatever. It was a small album. But then many, many years later, the fan of that small album got him to work on an Oscar-winning film because the fan of that small album was Guillermo del Toro. So you never know what thing, like if you keep making things, you'll never know who falls in love with it. And you'll never know what kind of job they have. And you'll never know if they're like, "Oh, I really like this person's work. Let me get them on this huge name production." Yeah. So don't be afraid to put your stuff out there. Ancient art side blog. Okay. What's the protocol for using pseudonyms and art names instead of your legal name? All right. Well, that's an interesting question because, I will say it's fine to use your nickname when you introduce yourself, um, and have your legal name on your resume. You know, I don't exactly know how far that goes in terms of like let's say for example I put Motzi. Motzi's not my real name. You'll find out if you go look at my LinkedIn. But not Motzi's not even my real name. It's my nickname. But it depends on how silly it gets. Like I don't know if I can introduce like if I can introduce an email saying like my name is Cheese or like or like Cheese Ball or something. Unless it's like literally what you're called in real life. So I would say like there's a bit of looseness for like having a nickname. And of course like think about like even if it's not on your legal documents, if it like have it be what you want to be known for professionally, you know, like if it you have to be like has to be your serious name even if it's not necessarily your legal name. But yeah, obviously in your resume have your real name, in your official documents have your real name, all contracts have to be legal name. um, yeah. Pseudonym Pseudonyms are okay, but contextual. Like try to think about like where you're gonna be if you introduce yourself, what you're gonna be putting in there, etc., etc. Um, okay. Yeah, use your like best judgment is basically my whole thing about this. How do you plan and organize personal projects? Well, here's some helpful tip. Plan a little bit, but just do it. Just do it! If you want to ask me how I got into comics, I just did it. If you want to ask me how I got into podcasting, I just did it. Like, have a realistic plan, but like, don't spend all your time planning. When you get it out there, it might start out a bit rough, but like, you can polish it as you go along. But you got to get it out there. Like, that's how you do it. Um, Jade, that's the best way, I think. Like, on my LinkedIn, I have my first name, my nickname, and my last name. Nickname in quotes, last name. That's always good for professional stuff. But yes, please go out and make things. Karmas Army. You can have like, if for example you have a resume and it says Karmas Army on it, and it has like underneath in like a smaller lettering it says your real name. I think that'll be fine. Try not to be like, oh, this is what I need to be called all the time, but try to, you can have it in there, but try to like be clear about which one your real name is. And they will ask you like, how do you want to be credited in credits, etc. But yes, please make things. Making things is important. That's not necessarily directly how you get jobs, but that's how I got most of my jobs, just by making things on my own. How do you deal with unprofessional superiors? Ooh, that's a good question. Um, Depending on which superior it is, you can tell a different superior about your concerns. Be diplomatic because you don't want to burn bridges. But say, I have a concern about like there I cannot like try not to play the blame game, so that you like be diplomatic about it. Like, let's say I don't know, uh let's say like Jay or something. Like, Jay is like, oh, Jay is being really unreasonable and being like really like kind of a dick. Don't say all that. Go to a different supervisor, go to HR, go to somebody and say, I have a like I can like I'm currently working on this thing. However, like I do have some concerns with, let's say Jay gave you an impossible deadline. I do have concerns with some deadline. I will only be able to do it this time. Basically, like, try to circumvent every bad thing that they're trying to do to you by bringing it up to somebody else and being like, be reasonable, like, like, oh, I can't finish it at this time, unfortunately I cannot do what this person asked, da 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 da. See how far you can go with that, and if it gets worse then you can report them, because like there's a certain amount where you just have to be very diplomatic and say, try not to pick a direct fight, because that'll only make things worse. If but you can like circumvent their problems by bringing it up to a different lead, bringing it up to HR. And if they continue to make problems, then you can mention what the problem is, and mention that it came from them, but don't say it's their fault, because you're gonna have to explain, like, it's a bit difficult to say. But yeah, just remember to be diplomatic. Try to focus on what the problem is rather than who gave you that problem. And at some point, you can mention to a lead like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like this person like gave me this deadline. Unfortunately, I can't work with this. Da da da." If it gets worse, then you can like raise it to HR. If it like these are levels of severity. Like, sometimes you may have a coworker that kind of sucks, but you can actually deal with them as long as you don't have to deal with directly with them. You can contact a different lead, etc., etc. But sometimes it'll be so bad that you do have to bring it up with HR. And if all fails and nobody deals with it, as I said, you can. It is very important that you know that you aren't stuck in your one place. That you can, in fact, give your 2 weeks notice, go to a different job with the experience that you have. But yeah, really depends on the circumstance. It really depends. But try to start diplomatic. Don't try to place the blame on them specifically. But once the pattern of behavior comes out and they're the source of every single problem, either somebody will get smart and get rid of them, or you will bring it up to HR. So yeah. But I've never like dealt with a specific thing, so unfortunately, it is like something contextual. Yes. Yeah, and don't vague blog about some. Well, here's a caveat. If you have a private social media that is not connected to your professional life in any way, feel free to vent there. Don't name anybody. Feel free to. That's why you need that personal social media separate from your professional life. Because if you vent on your professional Twitter or professional Tumblr or whatever professional like blog, they'll know. But if you vent on some on I don't know Slumlord 420 or like the Smut Dog Millionaire or whatever, just nobody's gonna notice. So that's why you need a private venting place. Basically, it's what it is. Yeah, I think yeah, I've kind of gone over a little bit. Let me just end this recording. Thank you so much, everybody. Let me just stop this recording so it's not going for too long. I did open the chat on the Q&A, just so you all know, but hopefully that's fine.